Welcome back to the Mental Wealth Mamas podcast.
If you haven't joined us before, I'm Ellie.
And I'm Jade, and we are two mums on a mission to end the silence that surrounds mental health.
Disclaimer, we are in no way medical professionals and we are not giving medical advice. If there is something you are concerned about, you should always seek medical help via your GP or maternity services.
This is in no way a substitute for therapy. We respect everyone's right to an opinion and hope this helps those who need it.
We talk about everything from the roller coaster that is parenting, mental health in general, and what it really means to achieve mental wealth.
We will be chatting to a lot of different people from all walks of life, both in the public eye and your everyday person. And today we have with us Rebecca Spaven, postnatal doula.
So Rebecca is a Berkshire-based postnatal doula who provides emotional, physical and informational support to parents in the immediate postpartum period. We are so grateful to have you here and thank you for taking the time to join us. We'd love to hear your story in your own words.
Thank you for having me. So essentially, I had my little boy 6 years ago and I felt woefully unsupported after I had him. And it really set me on a journey of self-discovery and also wanting to protect other people's journeys as well. I struggled a lot with postnatal depression, postnatal anxiety, and felt that the support that was offered to me was really quite poor and hard to find.
Yeah.
That was a massive thing. Everyone sort of said to me, you know, make sure that you talk to people and make sure you tell people how you feel. And I didn't want to tell people how I felt, and I didn't know who to tell, even if I had wanted to.
Yeah.
So I decided to train up as a postnatal doula, so I could really protect that postnatal space, however that looks for every parent, mum, dad, or otherwise, and just really work with them to make it everything that they want: calm, content, and peaceful.
You have a very calming vibe.
Oh, thank you.
It's like you give off, like just listening to you talk, I'm like, I'm zoned in, I'm like,
I'm calm.
I'm calm, I'm like, you're the calm to our chaos.
It really was as well. Okay, so you kind of, well, we have a couple of questions, but you've kind of gone, no, that's good. That's a good thing. Like, obviously, we were going to say what inspired you to become a postnatal doula, but obviously, your own journey has had a huge amount to do with that, because it was quite a drastic career change for you as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I'd gone from the fire service control room, working shifts, and you know, it was making that shift from helping people on someone else's terms to helping people on my terms that really fit in with where I was in my life.
Yeah.
I absolutely adored working at the fire service, but it just didn't fit for me after I went back after maternity leave.
Yeah.
I went back in, and I think it's the whole process of parenthood as well. I went back in, the job hadn't changed, but I had.
Yep.
I was entirely different. I felt weird the first night shift I went in, because I just thought, how has everything stayed so the same? And my world had been thrown up in the air. I'd gone through sort of pregnancy, labour, postnatal period, and it had been such a roller coaster, and yet that had remained so static.
Yeah.
It was really alien to me.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like walking through a storm on your way to work, and then you go in and no one else is wet, and you're like, huh?
Yeah.
Like, what is...
I like
Do you know what I mean?
that.
Like, you're just there like, I'm literally soaking, I'm drowning, I'm freezing, I'm all the emotions, and everybody else here.
Yeah.
And I definitely found that going back to work, you know, you're away from your baby anyway, emotionally you're up in the air, and then you walk in and everyone's like, oh yeah, you okay? And you get like a brief couple of seconds of like, how's baby, how's this, how's that, but I think that transition is something that workplaces just don't cater for yet. But I think they know how. No.
Yeah, they're just, you need more than that.
Yeah, I think they really need a dedicated person to support you going in, and I think a lot of mums now are quitting a job and going into a vocation, because I think if you're going to leave your babies and do something, it has to be something you're passionate about.
Absolutely.
That's why I went self-employed.
Yeah.
Because I worked out of my garden, or you know, and it meant that I could like
context.
Well, I set up I set up my business in my garden, in that building in my garden. So it was like I knew that even when I wasn't with the kids, they were in the house or they were at school. But like I was so close to the youngest that was still at home, kind of, that I was working around. So it is, that's why people go part time. They go self-employed. You know, because that juggle of work-life balance, that
intense.
typical phrase. Do you know what I mean?
It's a huge juggle.
Yeah.
When you're sort of at a point in your life when you know you've had no training.
Yeah.
You've got no real experience of it. You're trying to relearn yourself, learn about your babies, learn about the dynamics of everything, and then someone sort of says to you, "Oh, by the way, if you just want to go back to work as well."
Plus hormones, like if you're, especially if you're a breastfeeding mother, you know, and you're still, you know, people nowadays choose to breastfeed for such a long time, and your hormones are still raging throughout that process. Absolutely. And you've got to go back to work, and it's just like your mind is not in the same place as it was before you had your baby.
Yeah.
And it's the mums and the parents who decide to stop breastfeeding when they go back to work. Again, they're battling.
It's almost like a lot of them feel like they're forced to do it because they're like, how am I supposed to pump at work? And it's just this whole much bigger thing.
I think, and I think as well, like it's allowed for, but practically it's not really. Like they're like, you know, you can have them with positive mindset when it comes to supporting people coming back to work, but then the actual physical needs from you, like as an employer, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, sometimes you don't want to stick your freshly pumped breast milk next to someone's tuna pasta bake.
Definitely not tuna pasta.
God forbid the actual milk as well. My God. Not ideal. So we actually had a question of would you say your mental health journey kind of impacts on how you are as a doula? But I kind of want to expand on that in the sense of, do you ever find, obviously you said you suffered with postpartum anxiety and depression. How do you manage not being triggered when your clients are going through something and you maybe see a reflection of yourself in them? Like, how do you manage that side of things?
I have done a lot of training on how to sort of understand where they are and where they need to be, but not be part of it. And knowing where I can signpost them to, so that they're going to the right person, so I'm not taking it all on me. And I think that's part and parcel of the whole doula kind of experience, is that I can help them help themselves, because if I do something for them, they're not developing as a person. Like mums aren't able to.
They're not learning.
Mums aren't able to, and dads as well, not able to find their own way and really tap into that instinct and think, well, this works for me, and it's not, oh, well, Rebecca said to do this. I'm not telling them to do anything. I'm helping them, find their feet, really.
Oh, I love it. So what would you say are the biggest misconceptions about mental health that you would like to dispel from the kind of viewpoint of a postnatal doula, but also as a mother?
I think there's a few sort of things. I think there's this expectation that when you have a baby, you are supposed to be ecstatic. You're supposed to be in your baby bubble. You're supposed to be enjoying it. You're supposed to be calm, relaxed. And I think that there are a lot of parents out there that don't feel that and feel guilty, feel ashamed, feel that they can't reach out because, you know, worst case scenario, someone takes their baby off them, and there's that sort of education around that actually, you know, the healing process starts with talking, and nobody's going to judge you for having very real and very normal emotions. And that's sort of something that I struggled with when I had my little boy. It's knowing, it's having the belief that actually it's really okay to ask for help and support, and that it's not something to be ashamed of.
I think as well, you saying about no one wants to take your baby off of you. For me, that was huge because I had postnatal OCD, and everything was about making sure she was okay, making sure nobody was going to get her or take her, or not in the sense of take her away, but no danger, nothing. So for me, that was like, well, no, if I say something, this, I was like, this is what it is to be a mother, obviously.
It's fear
this
of judgment,
of
other people, and I think that's born or bred out of, we've lost our way of finding our own instincts, because there's so much white noise out there.
Yeah.
Like, you should be doing this.
Mhm.
You shouldn't be doing this. And
Mm.
obviously, if it comes to baby safety, then those are things to be considered. But if it's things like your baby should be doing this, like sleeping through, maybe you just don't have a baby that will sleep through.
I know.
And it's things like that, just being able to go, do you know what, this is my baby, I now know my baby in the way that I want to harness and really cultivate this relationship and this amazing human, and just running with it and just going where you need to go.
It's like not going with those textbook answers. I think when you're going through maternity, like especially as a first time parent, and you're so clueless and you have no idea what's going on, you lean on like your midwives and everything, and they give you these textbooks like to look out. So when I had my eldest, I was 21, and I was thinking like they had said, oh, do you have any issues with mental health? And mental health runs in my family, so like postnatal depression is this, and it's like they put it in a box.
Oh God, yeah.
And then when I had Bella, I had postnatal depression, but it didn't fit into that box. So I lived in a world of, I loved Bella, like there was no part. So I was like, I don't have postnatal depression because I love my kid, like she's amazing. All I want to do is be with her. But then it was everything else that fell away. I didn't want to do anything else. I just sat in a room with her and put all of my everything into her and nothing into anything else. And we moved in to our flat when she was 8 weeks old, and I was living in surrounded by boxes for months because I didn't care. I just wanted to be with my baby because I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
All-consuming expectation that I think is fed to us from society, that you have to be everything, do everything, and actually you can't. There's not enough hours in the day. You don't have that emotional capacity, physical capacity. You just don't have it. And people will, you burn out trying to do it. And I did. I burnt out. I think my mum looked at me and she went, look at you and look at him, and my little boy was thriving, and I was a shadow of my former self.
That's really hard because you just, with this baby that you think, right, I've got to do everything for this baby, and you just don't. You put yourself, and like that's motherhood, or parenthood in general, like putting yourself on the back burner. It's something we have to really force ourselves to actually keep ourselves relevant.
But I do also think though that people think that you kind of rock up with your baby, and if your baby's doing this and this, then that's all that matters.
It's a tick box, isn't
but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter here.
No.
I mean, I must admit, on the school run, most mornings I don't even look in the mirror. I just dash out the house.
I can remember.
But there's, obviously you bring it back to, and I think, over time I've said to my husband before, I'm losing myself a little bit. Like I'm not even. I have the basics. I have to put my eyebrows on when I go out, and I have to wash my hair now. But that's the thing for me. I have to do that because otherwise I could let that slip.
Helps you feel you.
And you let all these other things slip because your time is spent looking after this baby, so you don't have time for as much as you did. But I think you have to hold on to some things for yourself, like simple things, really simple things have to be your daily. I'm going to do that. Otherwise, that's how you kind of form that slippery slope almost.
Down.
Yeah,
definitely. I think it's finding that difference or differentiation between sort of lowering your standards, lowering your expectations, and knowing which one, you've still got your standards, but you're just expecting less of yourself. You're putting less pressure on yourself, and that's where you want to be. You still want to keep your standards, but just expect less of yourself.
Yeah.
And you can't do it all.
No.
That was something that I have told myself with every child I've had. Do you know what I mean? Because I can't do it all. I'm not that person that ticks all the boxes and does all the things, because, like we say, it takes a village, and
it does.
And there's some things that have to fall by the wayside for you to focus on the key things.
But I think those things that fall by the wayside are the things that we should be able to ask our village to help with.
For sure.
And I think sometimes I definitely for a long time, went into my own head about, if I ask for help, then I'm weak.
Yes.
I'm weak. And I'm not weak. Asking for help isn't weak. It makes you really powerful because it means that you've assessed, you've found where your strengths are, exactly what you can do, exactly the right amount for you,
Yeah.
and then you're outsourcing. Like you wouldn't, you know.
Outsourcing is.
I mean, you wouldn't have a
absolutely.
leak in your house and be like, no, I'm weak if I call a plumber, because you're not. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't though, would you?
It's so
And
true.
an electrician, you wouldn't be like, oh well, you know, I'll get a shock a couple of times.
I do
I'll
not have
figure it
that skill
out.
set, so I'm not
Yeah.
going to do it.
I very much live by that now.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes my husband will roll his eyes at me because he was in here this morning building furniture whilst I was painting my nails and doing my makeup. But I said to him,
Yeah.
you know,
I see nothing wrong with
don't
that.
have that skill set.
Yeah.
You're going to be far quicker doing this for me than, you know, I am trying to struggle to do it myself,
Yeah.
then rushing,
Yeah.
then doing this, this and this. Let's
Yeah.
work to our strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes you just have to think, it's not that it's not necessarily a strength, but other people can cook food for you.
See, that's something that
Other
I was
people-
going to say.
yeah.
It was
Basics.
ridiculous because I tried to keep up the whole sort of, you know, I'm a wonderful wife and I'm a wonderful
Yeah.
mother. And so my husband went back to work and I thought, right, well, I'm going to make sure it was how it all was before we had our son, and I'll make sure he's got dinner on the table
Yeah.
and all that type of thing. And it got to about 4:30, I was, you know, roaming the streets trying to get baby to sleep, and I thought, oh my goodness, I've got nothing ready.
Yeah.
And I thought, it makes me really sad for where I was emotionally when I talk about it. But it was, I went to the shop and I bought a ready meal and stuck it in the slow cooker for when he got home.
Yeah.
And he had
Good for
enough
you.
because I just thought I wanted to
Yeah, you wanted
be
to provide.
Mhm.
that person. Yeah. It was only when he said to me, oh, where did you get these little onions from? And I thought,
Uh-oh.
we just tried to style
Busted.
that one out. Yeah.
See, I didn't style it out at all. I cooked a load of batch cooked a load of food, stuck it in the freezer, didn't want any of it. So when my first was born, his way of getting me out, he'd be like, yeah, no, we don't really fancy that, do we? So we'll walk to the shop and get a ready meal
Nice.
and bring it back, because it was that fresh air that I needed
Yeah.
and that little bit of accomplishment. And he was like, yeah, see, this is good, this is fine. And then I'd, you know, cry about the fact we were eating a ready meal when there was all that food. But he was like, in time, just give it time. And then in time, we approached that. And then in time, I would cook and all of this sort of stuff. But it was him saying, you're not, you know, it's not all about me anymore.
Mm.
And actually, I did struggle with that, it not being all about my husband.
Yeah.
And when we had my daughter, and I'll feel forever guilty for saying it, but I looked at him and I said, I don't know if I love her as much as you, because I just love you so much right now for supporting me through everything.
Yeah.
Of course I loved her as much, and
Yeah.
I literally use him as a human shield to protect her. But, you know, but in that moment,
Your use has been served.
yeah. I don't know, a couple more kids and then it will be. But no, genuinely, like, in that moment, there was such a mix of emotions because I loved him so much
Yeah.
for all the support he was giving me, for all the support he had given me. And then there's this new person that I was like, well, of course I love you, but I don't know you. So
Yeah.
it was a real complicated mix, and I cried a lot about it. And then obviously one day I was like, you know, I know that I love her more than you.
I don't think I don't even think it's necessarily like a love that's the same.
It's different.
It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
different type of
But
love.
it was
and
wrapping your head around that.
because I found it when like you go on to have more children,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like, well, I don't know if I can love you as much. Like,
Yeah.
how much love can one
Yeah.
person give? Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
But actually, you just love them in different ways
Because they're different people.
because they're different people,
Massively different people.
and that's the wonder of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you know, everyone's just got a lot of love to give.
Yes. I definitely found that though, jumping from 1 to 2. I
Yeah.
sat there and I was like, I mean, I think I love you. No, I know I love you, but
Yeah.
before obviously she was born, but I'm looking at my eldest like, you know, if I'd have, obviously with my second pregnancy, I didn't know I was pregnant for a while, just to obviously add context to that, and I didn't think that I could get pregnant again.
Yeah.
So for me, I had my one, and she was my one and only, and
She was the one that made you a mum.
yeah, and I was, you know, I was okay with that. And it's the same, you know, again, I have my 2, and if medically I can't have any more, I always wanted more,
Mm.
but if I can't, I'm so happy with my 2, like they're everything. So I don't really, you know, I have that craving, but it's not consuming, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So then when you're sat pregnant with another one, whilst having this person that, you know, in front of you, your eldest, that made you a mum, made you everything that you are, and I really did go through it with my first, you know, and I feel like she kind of survived it with me. Like,
You're in it together.
we were in it together,
Yeah.
and she's always been my little light. And it's really difficult. It was really difficult at the time for me to kind of be like, well, it's going to look different this time, and you know, am I going to feel guilty if it goes better this time in terms of labour? But I don't think I did actually. I think it was more my second. Obviously, my first. There was a lot of trauma, mentally and physically, but it, you know, I still very much had a connection with her, thankfully. My second, it was very healing, because I think I went in knowing that I was not going to go through that again.
Yeah.
Even if physically I was rushed to theatre, all of that happened again, mentally I was not going to go back to the place that I'd been before.
Yeah.
And I think that's the four-armed kind of,
Absolutely.
How powerful
know,
is that though?
yeah,
Like,
there
that's
wasn't a
pretty
chance,
amazing.
because I was going back to her. I was
Yeah.
going back to the one that had, you know, you have it where you say, oh, you know, second time, third time parents have that, you know, if you end up getting rushed into theatre or whatever to have your baby, and it's a case of, you know, everybody says, I'll put my baby first, but actually you do kind of have that halt for a minute and think, well, no, because I've got to go back to her. No, do you know what I mean? I've got to go back to my eldest.
Yeah.
So it's not that simple anymore.
No.
It's not that simple anymore. And you know, I guess you don't consider that, do you, sometimes when you're in the midst of things? But I think that was my kind of power. I was like, absolutely not. Like, I'm going back to her, and I'm going back. I'm not staying in a week. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I'm going
I'm
back to
telling
her.
you what
Yeah.
I'm doing.
I'm being efficient this time. This is going to wrap up. I'm going to be
Listen to
okay.
me, get on with my programme,
Yeah, yeah.
otherwise we're not doing
Basically,
this.
I was though. I was really bad. I mean, my husband was like, I'm pretty sure you crossed your legs for 2 days and refused to go into hospital. And I was like, pretty much.
I don't know if you had something similar to me, because for a long time after I had my son, I was craving a second child,
Mhm.
without knowing if I could even have another child,
Yeah.
but almost make up for
Mhm.
where it went, where
Yeah.
I felt it
Okay.
went wrong.
Yeah.
And I wanted to sort of like redo that postnatal bit,
Yeah.
but do it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've come to terms with all of that. I've worked really hard on sort of healing those emotions and stuff. It was really hard,
Mm-hmm.
you know, working through these feelings of guilt. You know, I felt I'd not done it as good enough job as I could have done, but actually I did the absolute best that I could do
Mhm.
with those emotions, those hormones,
Yeah.
the situation, my environment, everything like that. But I don't think I'm the only person that sort of
No.
feels, you know, I need a second to make this
Yeah.
right.
I need to
you know.
correct it.
Yeah.
Mhm. But actually, I think the correction, not even the correction, but the healing comes child by child. And I think the healing comes in the sense of, so for me, I can only really draw on obviously my experience with postpartum OCD. But for me personally, when I finally spoke to a therapist at about a year on, I said to her, the most important thing to me is this does not impact on her.
Yeah.
So she will not know this,
Yeah.
or she will know it, but she will not, my storm's not going to get her wet. So I'm not going to, she'll know it's there for
Yeah.
sure, but it's not going to affect her life. It's not going to affect what she does. I obviously, even now, have a thing about her safety. I'm over cautious. I always will be. I'll always live with, I'll always live with OCD, and I've come to terms with that, but it's not going to impact on
It's the
her.
manifestation of it, isn't
Yes,
it?
and it's the healing you do. They don't know that you were going through the biggest storm of your life when they were a baby, but do you
No.
know what it will do when they have children? You'll be there to guide them through and notice those signs. If for whatever
Yeah.
reason they go through that, you'll be there. And that's also where the healing comes. The healing comes the whole way through their life, I think,
Yeah.
just not allowing it to take over.
Yeah.
And watching him sort of grow up into, I mean, he's 6 now, and he is everything I could have ever desired. And he's just incredible. And I think, well, I don't think I've done a bad job.
You haven't,
And
no.
it's
yeah,
that process of watching him grow up the
Mhm.
way he wants to, the
Yeah.
way I want him to. It helps you heal.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I think if we spent that whole time wishing for hindsight as well, you wish it away.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Like, obviously, when you parent a second, you have that hindsight from the first,
Mhm.
but then you try not to steer away from it too much, because you want them to have roughly the same upbringing. You don't want to.
Well, and also they're different people.
They
so
are, yeah.
They're going to have different experiences, and they're going to be, and that's, I think
Yeah.
that was the biggest thing that I learned was how can, like, I look at all my children, I'm like, how can they come from exactly the same people but be so different? And I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah, my first is definitely calm, and my second is wild. But I think I kind of needed her wild to, you know, I don't know, I guess, test how tame my mind can be. But you know what I mean? Test it all, you know.
Yeah.
She came quick, and she was, you know, I mean, she kept a schedule, didn't she? I didn't want to be in there long. She kept
She
to
knew
it.
the plan.
She knew the plan. She did. But yeah, I don't worry about her as much as I do my first, and that says a lot for trauma, I think.
I was going to say,
that's still the overshadow of trauma.
100%.
Because it's always gonna, I guess it's always gonna be there, but it's not letting it win.
That's it. You know, I think trauma it's so important to process that. You know, rather than what people have done for a long time is just like sort of push it down and try not to let it affect you.
Yeah.
And it just manifests itself in so many different ways that it's destructive. You don't deal with it. It's so destructive.
Yeah, and it comes out in it definitely does come out in different ways, doesn't it? And it can be, I mean, even if you go for a couple of drinks and all of a sudden you find yourself crying because
God, yeah.
Or even crying without the drink.
Yeah, without the
yeah. Or something
something
triggers you. Like I find things like that. Like when you can be watching something on TV and you're like, I'm like, oh damn, I need to deal with this.
Yeah, it is. It definitely does. Yeah, it definitely manifests, doesn't it? In
absolutely
different ways. Okay, so we've done the misconceptions. So actually that moves on quite nicely, because our next question to you obviously is what has been the most helpful resource or support for you in managing your mental health, and something you consistently use for your clients?
So in terms of my mental health, I mean, I had sort of anxiety before having my son. It was something that I wasn't warned about before that would get worse afterwards. So I wasn't introduced to the whole perinatal team, but that's something that I use with my clients.
Yeah.
I've used talking therapies. They
Big
have.
fan.
Sometimes when I mention talking therapies, people sort of roll their eyes and say, I don't want CBT, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to reframe. But actually the scope of what they offer now is off
incredible.
The scale. It's so good.
It's really interesting, isn't it? It's like not a taboo subject, I wouldn't say that, but it's like, it's definitely got a lot of judgment. I think a lot of people think it's something that it's not now.
Yes.
It might have been at one point.
Yes.
And might not have necessarily been the perfect tool for a lot of people. But I do agree, like it's changed so drastically to keep up with technology and time and all that stuff. And I think for it being a free tool.
Yeah.
Talking therapies literally saved me. Like, I mean, the GP offered me a lot of medication, but because my brain was so addled during birth because of medication, I was adamant I wasn't taking anything, I wasn't wiping my brain, and I know that some people, that's not judgment on other people.
No.
I think I almost developed a fear of taking anything, and I wanted to go right down to the root cause of what was happening, so I could fix it or help it or heal it or move it along. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want, and talking therapies helped me do that. And I had several rounds of talking therapies, and the first lady I spoke to, at the end of it, she was like, "You've come so far, you've done so well, I'm sorry that I couldn't get you where you need to be." And I was like, "Why are you apologising to me? You've literally..."
That's really interesting.
It starts a process. And again, it allows you to just go in your own direction. It's knowing where to start a lot of the time, isn't it? And that's something that I also do, because I volunteer for Panda's Foundation on the helplines and crisis.
Oh, nice.
And it's about signposting to where you can go, because a lot of the time people are going to their GP and going to a health visitor and midwife, and they say, "We'll try this," and they try it, doesn't work, and they're like, "I don't know where else to go." And they just feel trapped, they feel alone, and with no real direction.
Yeah. We were actually kind of discussing that earlier, because I think that, I mean, I don't know where this money is going to come from for this service, but I think that we need a service where there are designated postnatal GPs where they see women up to 2 years postnatally. They do blood tests for things like anemia and all that sort of stuff, because you know, where you're not necessarily nourishing yourself properly, you could be under in those, and that could be spiraling a lot of things, like, you know, it could help you get better sleep, but also things for, you know, they know exactly the symptoms. They sit down and take the time with you, not a 10-minute appointment and then be like, oh, off you go.
Really
like,
looking at the whole situation, your relationships with your partner, how you're getting your support, where you're getting your support from, are you looking at how you're getting your sleep, what type of rest you're getting if it's not sleep, you know, how are you functioning. And
that should be a service that continues for, I think, up to 2 years. We should be taking care. I mean, in other countries, they have
Scandinavian countries. They've got it right.
I know, they really do.
They've got it nailed down.
They have, and I just think that that's needed here, because even basic things like even having a woman's physio to know, like, because your body physically changes after having a baby, and I think that sometimes you expect it to go back. And I'm not just talking being bigger than you are, or, you know, slightly wobblier than you were or whatever. I mean, we're up. Oh yeah, yeah, I was too. I never had a bikini body, so I don't know why I keep wishing.
A bikini body is a body that wears a bikini.
Good point.
Let's just clarify that.
Good point. Okay.
We are here for the self-positivity.
I never had a body that would be on the front of a gym magazine, should we say?
Okay, that's fine. I can deal with that.
I would never have that.
Everyone's got a bikini body.
Yes, everybody does. That's the one. It was never like that before. So when it came to afterwards and I was expecting it to pop back to that, I was like, what am I doing? But, you know, physically your body does change. And knowing, you know, my second, where she came so fast, I had like a gap. I can't remember what it's called now, between my muscles. And, like, you know, luckily the hospital flagged it, because my GP was just kind of like, you know, not really.
My friend who's a PT, and I did some training with her after I had the kids. She was the one who actually was like, we really need to work on this.
Yeah, and your pelvic floor and all of these things.
I think is
because being given a leaflet on it.
It's not going to read that. There is the NHS app that I downloaded. I don't know if they still even have it, to be honest, but when I was pregnant, and you know, you just think, oh, it felt like such a chore. And it's that re-education of actually, if you do this, you are going to save yourself a lot. And trampolining can be a
I was going to say, yes, trampoline parks are no longer a traumatic event. Yes, I do definitely stand by the side, like, good for you.
That's so funny. But that flows really nicely into, so obviously where we are in society now, cost of living crisis, everything like that, you know, lots of people are struggling, lots of young families are struggling, well, not even young families, just families in general. Obviously it'd be wonderful if everyone could have a U through their their birthing and postnatal process. Where would you recommend people to look if maybe they don't have like funds to get a postnatal doula, or, you know, are there different like packages that you offer? Are there, you know, what would you kind of recommend?
From sort of my perspective, I can offer sort of smaller packages. You know, I'm always open to having that conversation with somebody about sort of their capability and sort of what they're after, really. But if I'm not the person for them, I would usually signpost. Local councils are really, really good in terms of getting that initial kind of group-based support for families. So you've got your breastfeeding support, you've got emotional support. Obviously it varies from council to council, but then it's really looking at yourself and finding out what emotions you're feeling, what emotions you want to deal with first, and finding the right charity organisation for that.
I think that's really hard to do, isn't it?
It is really hard, but that's something that I'm happy to have a conversation with someone and sort of say, try these, try that. I'm not going to charge someone for that. It's not in my nature, it's not what I stand for. You know, if someone is coming to me asking for advice, you know, I've got that information, I know where to send people. So that's definitely where I would start. You know, charity organisations who have the resources to offer a wealth of information support for free.
Yeah.
And what we'll do is we'll also get like all your information, your website, your social media and everything, and we'll put it in the notes in the comments. So like anyone that's listening, they can then find you and then kind of
Hunt me down.
Yeah, hunt me down, exactly.
Ask
come
that
knocking.
chat. Yeah. Okay, so we like to do a quick fire agree or disagree round, which we'll lead into shortly. But before we do, we put this out on social media, and it was quite a controversial question actually, and it caused quite a mix of reactions.
Oh,
So we just want to see what your answer to it is.
Okay.
Because we think it's a great, it's a great topic for discussion. So if we say to you, parenting is not hard, it's the other daily, weekly, monthly expectations that make it hard, what would your reaction be?
I would say parenting is hard. Even if you take everything out of that, like I said before, you're still learning to get back in touch with yourself.
Yeah.
You're learning a new human being. You're learning different dynamics in terms of your relationship with your partner, if you have one. That whole family thing, your day-to-day life and your world has changed, regardless of if you need to drag a hoover around or if you need to go shopping. You know, so I think parenting is hard, and that sort of flows down the same thing as when people go, "Oh, breastfeeding's so natural." And you think it is. It's natural in terms of it's what our bodies are built for, but it's not natural like blinking. You can't just do it.
And also, it's natural if it works for you.
Exactly.
Yes.
But like, what if it doesn't work for you?
Yeah.
And there's so many. What if it doesn't work for your baby?
Yeah.
Like,
There's so many like caveats to it.
Yeah,
When
100%.
people say, "Oh, it's so natural," you think,
I know.
"Oh, get in the bin."
or people say, "You just whack your boob out." I'm like,
Not
no,
really.
that's not quite how it works.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
it's
takes
just
time
like,
and it takes
yeah.
effort, and it's hugely rewarding if
Yeah.
you can get to that place with or without support.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really lucky in Berkshire that we do have some excellent support for breastfeeding and things like that. So yeah,
We'll
So it's
definitely
hard.
link those as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Breastfeeding's always a
I
hot
do think,
topic.
I do think it takes confidence to do it as well, though.
It's really
Like-
interesting because with so I tried to breastfeed all three of my children. First, I did for 3 weeks. She just didn't take to it. I internally took that as a me problem, but then years down the line, and probably when I was then pregnant with my second, and I was like, I really want to try breastfeeding. I had issues, and they're like, it can be a baby. It can be like, it's not a you issue. Like, doesn't mean you're going to struggle this time round. So then did it for 4 months with my second, and then did it for 11 months with my third. And it was honestly such a rewarding thing. And I was so confident. And I went for lunch to the Ivy with like some family members, some friends, all that stuff. And I was breastfeeding. I had like a muzzy over me, but I was it was like second nature.
Yeah,
and I was just I just did it. I was just like, wasn't like my boob was not out for everyone to see. I was quite modest. And a family member said to me like, do you really think you should just be doing here at the table? Like lots of people can see. I was like, oh,
you're
for real?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm covering him up a little bit, like, and I'm not exposing myself. But it's just really interesting because you can feel really good about something and confident, but you still get judged. The judgment is always there one way or another, and it's how we cope with it.
Yeah.
You can't be accountable and fix everyone else's emotions about what you're doing. You just
because someone else is uncomfortable with it doesn't mean it should stop you from doing it or whatever.
I think that goes to mental health as well.
Yeah, and I do think it ties in.
Yeah, it definitely does. But I mean, even with back to feeding, obviously, I've been judged for bottle feeding my first because somebody thought that they had the right to tell me that she wouldn't have allergies had I breastfed.
Oh, really?
I mean,
Oh
yes, she
would.
would.
Nobody should ever have an
No.
opinion on the way someone else is choosing to parent. If
it's not your child, don't say anything.
Yeah, if that parent has the absolute best intentions for their own baby, based on their choices, their instincts. Who's got the right to do that?
I do find it's like older generations a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, it can be.
Because they're like, back in my day.
Yeah.
I'm like, sorry,
Generation
what? Like,
gap
we've
is
progressed.
real.
isn't it?
We have progressed. Okay. Do you agree or not? Okay. Do you, so we can, I mean, you can divulge if you want to, or you can just be like, agree, don't agree.
Yeah.
Totally up to you how you roll this round. Do you think that mental health in motherhood is spoken about enough?
No.
Boom, done. Do you think there is enough accessible aftercare postnatally?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Do you think things have improved since you had your son 6 years ago?
That's a really hard one to answer because I have changed my entire career based on my experience, so I know what's out there now.
Yeah.
Compared to what I didn't know was there before.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, so it might not have been a case of it wasn't available, you just might not have had the knowledge
Didn't
to
know
know
about it.
about
So
it.
from my experience, yeah, it's improved because
Uh-huh.
I know more about it.
Yeah.
But, whether that comes down to my own postnatal kind of education that I had back then.
True.
So yeah.
No, I agree with you on that one though, because when I was in hospital with my first, they gave me a monitor that I had to flick through. I mean, a week after having a baby, major trauma, and they're like, this could be this, and this, and then that was it. Check out, done. My second time, it was so different. It was so different. I was so supported physically, mentally, everything. Like the second I spoke and said about my mental health, everything was there for me. Like everything was there. So I definitely
It's funny
agree.
because I have like a different. So, like my first, there wasn't that much support. Second, a bit more. But with my third, because he was 2022, so post-COVID, and they look at you as a third-time mum, they're like, you've got this. Like, do not worry, keep it going. Like, I had
but
to.
That baby, is it the same as
I know.
yours too?
That was it was the biggest shock to me, because I was like, I had to be given those injections. I think when you have 3 children, is to stop blood clots or something, or it might be to do because of my heritage. I don't know, I can't really remember. But I had to inject myself for 10 days. Yeah, I know. It was not fun. But it was like, here's the thing, I'll show you how to do it, go off and do it, basically. And then I had to inject me, and they're like, you've got to do it at the same time every day. And it was a lot. And I think, like, I definitely feel as a third-time mum, you're given, and post-COVID, if you're in that time frame where you had a baby either in lockdown or the couple of years after lockdown, it definitely dropped off. I think, and that, I think people will, like, parents will be feeling that, like, later on down the line, because they didn't necessarily get that support then, because everyone was like, obviously COVID was a massive thing, but it doesn't take away from, you know, being a mum,
but I
first,
do
second,
think,
third, fourth, however many times, I still, like you say, each baby's different.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of these parenting books that some people sort of feel that they need to stick to more rigidly. That's why they're there as a guide, and it's about learning your baby and learning yourself and the interactions that you have and what they're telling you, and rather than just going, right, the book says.
I think it's learning to let the right bits in instead of absorbing.
And also what feels right. Because someone could say, this is how you this is how you do something, and then they're like, well, it doesn't quite work for me, our family, our dynamic, so I'm going to do it this way. Okay, cool. As long as it's still...
I think it's even like the basics of a baby between my first and second, even basics like how each of them burped and how each of them were comfortable. My eldest used to be comfortable laying in what looked like the most ridiculously uncomfortable position, but it obviously supported a part of her body that she needed support on, and she used to stay like that. It was really uncomfortable for me, but and my second didn't want to be cuddled at all, wanted to be left alone. Still is very much like that. She gets too hot, she just wants everybody at arm's length. She'll tell you when she wants a hug, and it's very fleeting, and that's how she's been since birth.
I love it.
But I think that's the difference. Even the basic things, you're kind of like, you've got to absorb as much as is good for you.
And just block out that white noise that really doesn't fit with the way you want to. I guess
it's learning to do that. Okay, back to agree or disagree, do you think it's possible for women to have great careers post-children whilst balancing?
I think it is possible, but I think it's unrealistic to say it might be the same career that you had before your baby.
Nice.
Agree,
okay, so do you think women who miscarry or have stillborns are underrepresented when it comes to postnatal care? Yeah,
I mean, I don't tend to deal with a lot of that kind of side of things in terms of sort of birth loss and trauma, but I'm being someone that's had losses, I definitely think that there is not enough out there to care for the emotional side of things. Actually, I was talking to somebody yesterday because my first pregnancy was one of the ones that I lost, and it's the thought process behind it all of what happens if this is it. What happens if I can't ever be a mum? And then it's the knock-on effect of that on subsequent pregnancies, and it's
and the anxiety that you must get from that.
Yeah.
There's someone that has anxiety anyway.
But if you're carrying then then you had your son, the anxiety that you must have had throughout that process.
And even afterwards, and I think that kind of manifested itself in the way I was with him. It was it was all consuming. I did everything for him, and I let everything go for myself because I thought, well, I'm so lucky, and I was, and I am lucky to have him. But I gave up far too much of myself.
Such a vicious cycle, though. You think almost like it of a loop. So you had the anxiety pre having children, then obviously you have the trauma of losing a baby, and then you're then pregnant, have a successful pregnancy, and it's like a loop, and it's like knowing how to break the cycle, isn't it? It's like
it's having that supportive intervention, somewhere to go, and someone to sort of say, right, tell me how you're feeling, because as far as I felt that they'd sort of go, well, she's not pregnant, so she's just back to where she was a few weeks ago. But my entire world had fallen apart. Like literally everything, nothing was the same, and that wasn't catered for. That wasn't considered. I think there's a lot more that can be done for post miscarriage and post.
I don't think people feel seen enough. Like
absolutely,
I can remember being told, "Oh, it's just baby blues." Like I'm like, okay, and because I was young and I didn't know any, I was like, oh, everyone talks about baby blues, like, it's just something that happens, so I'll get over it. And then time goes on, and you're like,
still quite blue.
Still
feeling a shade of blue. But I think it's that, like, if you can feel seen and feel heard, and validated, like. That's a big thing, like getting people to talk about their emotions.
But I do think tying in again with talking therapies, I found that amazing because initially all my appointments, I could choose whether I went somewhere. Which again, I was like, no about that. I don't think I want to go anywhere. I don't think I want to leave the house and do this because like parking's the thing for me anyway. I'm like, if I don't know where I'm going to park, I'm not going. It's as simple as that. If it's not accessible parking,
if it doesn't have space with my name on it, I'm not doing it.
I'm driving past and I'm not attending. But generally, like, I found it really easy and accessible to have somebody who I didn't have to look at. I could say all these things that were going on in my head, and I didn't have to look at her, and she didn't meet me with silence. She didn't meet me with, oh, okay, nothing like that. She just said, I completely understand. It's no wonder you're feeling like that. And I felt for the first time in a really long time I could breathe, and the only other person that I had told was my husband, who said the exact, well, actually he said to me, I know, and I think you're really brave because I can't force you to tell me. I can't force you to tell me, but we can now
it's
move
having
forward.
Space to use those words, and like you say, when there's that relief, there's often a lot of crying, which people really don't want to do because they feel like they're falling apart. But it's such a natural release with relief of everything that's going on, and I think it's so important to cry.
Yes, it
I love a good cry.
Me too, and I also really like to sigh, which sometimes sounds like I'm huffing at people, but if you have a good old sigh,
it's almost like that screaming thing. You know that scream therapy that you can get done when you lie. I really want to do that. Like, you go to and you scream, and then most people just burst into tears because it's the pure release of the pent up anger and feelings and emotions, and it's so raw. But it's like it sounds a bit woo woo. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think we still live. I do feel like people are more spiritual and all that kind of stuff nowadays, and a bit more in touch with their emotions, journaling, gratitude, manifesting, all that stuff. But I do feel like it is all still a little bit of a topic not to talk about.
It's like an emotional cuddle, though, isn't it? Things like
and
that.
It's allowing yourself that kind of uncontrollable release.
Yes. To move
and
forward.
Being comfortable with it, and not feeling like, oh well, I need to keep this in because then I've got control, which is one of the things that every new parent wants to have. Because you have no control.
But I think once you let it all out, you can then just leave it there.
Yeah.
Like you've let all of that go.
I'm sure I read an article that said that like with sort of science biology, when you cry, those sort of hormones come out in your tears,
Yeah.
and that's why it helps you to feel better.
Yeah,
That's why I love to cry.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I'm
think
going to
it's
tell
so.
people I'm crying, but it's good for
Yes.
me.
But I think as well, like talking therapies encourage your village, whoever they are, to be a part of your process as much as you are comfortable. Because for me, having postnatal OCD, I needed support, literally needed support, because I would, to give context, I would be checking doors and windows and whatnot constantly, and I would be up till 4 a.m. checking to make sure that I had locked them, and I would go back. I was exhausted, and I would go back and I would be like, oh no, wait a minute, I think I opened it that last time, because you get that intrusive thought with it. And I think for me it was being able to be honest and say, you know, that's what's happening, but also for him, my husband, to physically come down and say, we've done the door, we've done it together, or we would put a post-it note. And that's how I literally healed, by physically having him come and help me do it and release responsibility of that. And that's a lot of what they talk about, is that not everything is your responsibility. Yes, you are the parent. Yes, you've brought this baby into life, you've carried them, you've birthed them, you've done all of this, but they're out in the world now. There are other people who can access them, and that can be a positive thing, and you need to let it in, like that.
And to be
share
okay
that
with that sometimes your village doesn't look like a technical village. Do you
No.
know what I mean? Like, because for like single parents or people who have family members like far away and a bit isolated, you know, there's ways to make your village your village. So it's like, it doesn't have to be the textbook, but just knowing that you can ask for help, and that doesn't make you less of a person.
And knowing that sort of one thing won't fix everything. It's about finding that direction and then just using little things to plug the gaps. Just every small baby steps. And just, you know, going easy on yourself with progress as well, because it's not linear.
No, it really isn't.
Recovery from anything, or adjusting to different emotions, different lifestyle, it takes time. It takes so much time.
And one of the things my therapist said to me, you know, sometimes you'll see a step, but within that step is 10 little steps, and you may go backwards on those, but you just got to redo them. You're just building a solid base. You're just making sure you know those 10 steps inside out. So even if you do go backwards, you know how to go. You know how to keep doing it until you then go on to the next bit. So it's definitely knowing you can do it, I think, is, you know, it's just a little bit of oomph. Sometimes is all you need.
Get on up there. So the last one is, do you think mental health should be focused more in schools?
Yes, I do. Obviously, you know, age appropriate and everything. But I think the next generation that's coming up now will be more aware of mental health anyway, because of the changes that we're making as parents.
I agree, definitely.
I think for sort of my parents, particularly my dad, was very much you know, I'll give you something to cry about, so you know, you keep your emotions in.
That's so true.
Seen and not heard, that kind of thing. And I wanted to
adult time.
I wanted to, particularly with my son, I wanted to break that. I wanted, you know, I wanted him to be part of the family, and not just adults and kids. And I think both me and my husband are quite open about, you know, if we're having a bit of a blue day, we'll just sort of say, you know, can I have another cuddle, because you know, it's going to make me feel so much better, without putting the responsibility on him to fix it. You know, to say I'm working through a few things, and that's the way that we as a family do it. But I think it's really important that kids are aware that it's okay to feel not 100%, and not every day has to be the same.
And the classic school, you'll be okay once you're in, distract.
Yes.
I think Inside Out did a wonderful job. They did a wonderful job.
That's really good.
Separating and untangling those emotions.
And then knowing that they can coexist.
And knowing that really how it takes a toll on your body. Because it's like the way that I interpret Inside Out is like they don't have control of those emotions. And sometimes it will just take over, but that's
also okay.
I think a few adults, myself included, could benefit from actually paying attention to the fact that I've got no control over it.
I think as well, like I regularly am like, I'm sorry, to my kids. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Do you know how
That was a bad moment.
Yeah.
And you know,
Sorry,
I'm trying
shouting at
to
you.
and I'm
I was
trying
on
to
me.
teach my daughter, you know, when things happen at school and she falls out with somebody or something, I say, okay, well, they were having a bad moment. They're not a bad person. No one's a
Yes.
bad person. They reacted badly. The
Yeah.
reaction's not great, but the person, and we learn from those reactions. And sometimes it just happens.
Yeah.
Just happens. And that's, you know.
I think it gives the kids sort of more emotional flexibility because then they don't react badly to a situation, and it doesn't have that domino effect of then they retaliate.
And they don't internalise it, because I think if they saw us behaving in a way, they might think it's on them. But if you're apologising for it and being like, oh, I'm sorry, I had a bad day or a bad moment or I got overwhelmed, then instantly that's like, oh, that was just mummy having a bad moment. Not I did something and mummy spoke to me that way kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not on them, it's you're kind of like taking that ownership and being like...
I have found myself in the past where I've really snapped at him, and then I've taken a step back and gone, actually, he's just being him. I'm having a tough day,
But that's okay. And for you not to beat yourself up either, because I think mum guilt is.
With him and just sort of say, look, you know, I'm really sorry. And he goes, you were a bit shouty.
So let's just make you beg.
A bit shouty.
At least he tells you though. I mean, that's good. You can, you know, laugh about it eventually. Once the guilt's consumed you.
So
okay. If you had 3 tips, so we're going to leave obviously the agree disagree. If you had 3 tips for postnatal mothers, what would they be?
I think prepare antenatally for the postnatal period. Know what you're going into, and try and seek out your support before you've had baby.
Nice.
So that you've got that kind of bank of research for the time when you don't have time to research. I would say to really tap into your own instinct. Trust who you are as a person. Trust what life has taught you, and use that to parent in the best way that you want to parent. And third one, it's always hard to think of things in threes. I can always think of 2. I think just draw in as much support as you can, unapologetically so.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know, if you want help and someone is prepared to help you, think nothing more of it. Take that help and run with it.
Yeah, I like that.
I think it's hard to ask for help without feeling guilty or feeling like you owe someone.
Yeah, I was going to say if you owe someone. Yeah.
So
I think if you've got a good village, it always comes back anyway.
Yeah.
So are there any charities or groups that stand out in your mind as a place that mothers can go to find support? So I know we talked about a few earlier, but just give us a kind of...
So the ones that I mean, again, it's going to be sort of what's playing on people's minds, but as a generic kind of starter, you've got your local council, which will provide some sort of guidance in terms of what they have for mental health and physical support and things like that. You've got Pandas Foundation, which they have helplines, they have WhatsApp groups that you can join, you've got email, you've got in-person support groups, and you've got like on Zoom every Thursday night. So if you can't get out, because not everyone can get out when they've got kids.
We don't want to.
A lot of parents, I find, struggle if they have a high crier as well, because it can make you feel quite isolated, because you feel that you don't want to go out because baby's just going to cry. You have Crisis for that, which is CRYSIS.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And all the volunteers there are trained to, well, they've all had high criers, and they're trained to not stop the crying, but help the parents cope. Cope better, because when you've got a mini boss screaming at you all day, it really chips away.
It's used as a form of torture, isn't it? In some things, you see SAS Who Dares Wins. They put the headphones on them, and it's a screaming child. So it is.
No.
It instantly puts you on edge.
See, my son, he had colic and reflux, and if he was awake, and this was for a long time, if he was awake, he was crying. And it just
it's exhausting.
It's so hard, because you think, what am I doing wrong?
Not taking it personally.
And you sort of then you're looking at all different options of what it could be, and that's hard as well. So
I didn't know about Crisis actually.
No.
So cool. Lastly, what does mental wealth mean to you?
Mental wealth, I think, is about not expecting that perfect balance of emotions. It's, for me, about identifying the emotions that aren't working for you, sitting down with them, acknowledging them, and then really working out how best to move forward with them rather than fighting against them. I don't think that you'll find many people who have got all their hormones and emotions and everything working for them and they've got nothing to worry about because it just works.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about just acknowledging how you are now, where you want to go, and just working with it and talking as well.
Talking helps.
That's what we're here for. We're here to talk.
Is there anything else you want to add before we?
I feel like we haven't covered
Yeah.
everything. We covered TikTok.
We're so grateful for you.
We are,
coming in,
honestly.
yeah,
Thank you so
having
much
me.
for
It's
taking the
been
time.
lovely.
learning a lot.
Good.
So thank you for listening to us today. A community is built together, and we could not do this without you, our listeners, and our village.
We promise to continue replacing judgment for curiosity to learn and grow with you.
We are all weathering many storms, and sometimes the only step we can make, however small, is forward.
So if forward is your pace today, we respect you and we are right beside you.